Welcome. Firstly, wanted to say thank you to everyone for coming. We know that there's a lot of conflicting priorities. There's parenting, there's partnering, there's careering, there's money, which we obviously spend a lot of our time in. But I think it's a huge pat on the back for everyone to take time out of their busy schedules to be here. One of the things we often talk about at Rising Tide is your values have got to dictate your vision, and then the strategy comes after that. And I think a lot of people talk about their values, but not a lot of people live them. So for you guys to be here, I think it shows real congruence that if you say, that you want to be a great parent, you say you want to be a better person, and you're here. There's a lot of people that aren't, so well done. And on from that, also want to thank my team, some who are here, some who aren't here. The work that our team does at the front end, we've got Rebecca, Sam, Alex and Marcus that are here. We've also got our chairman Pete, Mimi who does a lot of the back end stuff, and then we've got our team spread all over the place. For us to be able to sort of do this, we couldn't do it without the support of our clients, but also the support of the back end. And Kate also, who is finishing up with us in a couple of weeks, has had a lot to do with putting this together. Now, before we get into it, I want today to be extremely informal. So Kasey will have the microphone for a good chunk of today. We're aware that there are some questions that may be relevant to everyone, but we're also wary that there might be some questions that are a little bit more personal. So if you want to take the opportunity afterwards to speak to Kasey, she's more than happy to do it. Or alternatively, like some people did in the lead up, send an email through and we can pass that on. Kasey, it was a really interesting story of how Kasey is here. I was reading her purple book. There's a purple book, there's a yellow book. I was reading the purple one after about 3 years ago, listening to the audible version of the yellow one, and it just didn't click at the time. Max was about 2, Rosie wasn't yet born, and anyway, I was reading it, and there was a quote, and I won't quote it, I'll paraphrase it, about basically that if you had dreamt of having a rose, but you ended up with a sunflower, if you continue to nurture that sunflower like a rose, it won't end up like a rose. You've got a sunflower, you've got to nurture a sunflower. And I messaged my sister, who's here, and I was like, oh, Melissa, I read this, I'm reading this amazing book, and, blah, 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 back and forth. She's like, oh, tell me more about it. And I said, book's called Raising Girls Who Like Themselves, and the lady's name is Kasey Edwards, and I've sort of done a bit of Googling, searching, which I'm pretty good at. And I was like, I want to get in contact with her. And she's like, oh, Kasey lives in Port Melbourne and her daughter goes to the same school as my son. And so I reached out to Kasey and I said, look, this is what we do. And I think Kasey was a little bit lost on why a financial planning business was wanting to run this session and future sessions. But long story short, as I said, we firmly believe that our vision at Rising Tide is dictated by our values. And if we're not living them individually, but also as a business, then it's sort of not worth building a business. So without further ado, Kasey Edwards is one half of the team that puts these books together. Was fortunate enough to meet Chris, Kasey's husband, the other day. There's so much background. I think it's, we're in double figures with the amount of books that you've written and countless hours, years and frustrations as parents to both Violet and Ivy. I'm going to hand it over to Kasey now. She's going to give us what I asked, actually. Another quote that Kasey wrote was that kids don't need perfect parents. They just need ones that are good enough. So if we can walk out of here and be remotely good enough, I think that's a win. But I'm sure there'll be some intricacies, some game plans, some strategies with that mindset for you guys that whatever your values dictate, create the vision for who you want to be as a parent, and Kasey will help with the strategies, just like our guys do with the strategies with your money.
So first of all, Matt, thank you very much for having me here today. In a little while, I'm going to be talking about a traditional masculine value of service, and Matt is a shining example of that, and you'll see why that's so important to be raising and establishing in our boys. I'll get on to that. Okay, so first of all, thank you all for coming, and I really do mean that, because parenting, we know that it's about love, We know it's about duty and responsibility sometimes. We know it's about intuition, but it is also about skills. And the best parents have the best skills. So thank you for coming along today to invest in your skills. So most people, the parenting skills that they have are the ones that were given to them by their parents. And maybe that's great. Maybe you had the best parents in the world, and if your kid turns out half as good as you, then everyone is winning. But maybe there's some things that you want to tweak. And maybe for no other reason that our kids are going into a world that is so much different than the world that we went into. So what our kids need from us is actually different from what we needed from our parents. So my husband, Dr. Christopher Scanlon, and I have spent 16 years researching skills-based parenting. We are researchers and writers. Everything I'm going to say to you today is based in evidence. We don't make anything up. We are the muse to communicate the latest credible, high-quality research. But having said all of that, nobody knows your children the way you do. And kids don't read the manual. So what I say today, I encourage you to take in with an open mind, even the bits that make you a bit uncomfortable and challenge you, because there might be things in there, because there might be things that are wildly different from the way that you have been parented. Think about it with an open mind and then decide for yourself. No one knows your kid better than you, all right? Keep that in mind. So if there's things I say to you today that just don't feel right, that aren't going to work for you, your family, your child at this moment in time, please leave it here in the room and take out of here the strategies that will work for you. And my aim today is to give you at least a few of those. Chris and I are busy parents too. We both work. Our family is imperfect, just like everyone else's. And our focus was also not only on credible research, but on strategies that you can actually apply in real life. So we're focused on micro-parenting moments that can actually change your child's life. And so because we don't know about the future that our children are going into, we don't know the opportunities, we also don't know the threats. Instead of preparing them for very specific events, what we need to do is build a solid foundation so that they are strong enough to weather the storms of life and also soar to reach their potential. So our focus is parenting skills that raise children who are ready for anything. And at the core of that is liking themselves, which is another way of saying a rock-solid self-worth. So Matt and I are going to get on to Q&A later. But before we do that, I'd like to give you 3 evidence-based strategies that you can implement in your home. You can start today to build rock-solid self-worth. One is for boys and girls, one is mostly for girls, and the other one is mostly for boys. If we have time, and if anyone is interested, I will also throw in a strategy which is the current best practice for handling bullying. So if anyone has concerns about bullying, I have a strategy that works like a magic wand, okay? So I can get onto that if you have time and if you're interested. All right, so the first strategy I want to talk to you about is called flipping praise. One of the issues that our children have in today's society, now keep in mind I'm speaking generally, okay, so it may not be the case for your family, but in general, our children are being raised with what psychologists call an external locus of control, far more than any other generation. What that means in practice is they are looking outside of themselves for their worth. They're looking for marks, they're looking for approval from peers, they're looking for likes on social media, they're looking for validation from influencers to decide if they're good enough. By the age of 10, if your children are 10, you might start to see it, particularly in girls. We hear from parents saying, my daughter is so consumed about what other people think of her. We interviewed girls who didn't want to go to school because they were worried about what someone would think about their drink bottle. Or 6-year-olds picking their book week costume and it doesn't even occur to them to think about what they want. They're thinking about what other people will think of them and picking a costume that other people would like. So they're growing up without any sense of self that they get to decide who they are and if that's good enough. Essentially, we are raising a generation of praise junkies. So the strategy is called flipping praise, and it doesn't take any more time than what you're already doing. During your child's childhood, they will come to you approximately 6,000 times asking for praise. They will come and say, do you like my drawing? Do you like my dress? Do you like my somersault? Do you like my Lego? Do you like my project? And on it goes, right? Every time we answer freely, oh yeah, that's great, that's awesome, I love it. What we're saying to our child is my opinion about you matters more than your opinion about you. 6,000 times we are teaching our children to go outside of themselves to find out if they're good enough. So a tiny little tweak. Do you like my drawing? You say, you know what? It's your drawing, so I'm really interested in what you think. What do you think about your drawing? And if they like it, you go, that is great, because it's your work, and so your opinion matters most. If they don't like it, you say, well, what do you think you might try next time? Encourage them to think for themselves about how they can meet their own standards. So it doesn't take you any more time, but 6,000 times you can teach your child that their opinion about them matters most and build their internal locus of control. Now, a word of warning, when you try this strategy, you will probably get pushback. And the reason is because all of us, myself included, before we did this research, we are training our kids to be praise junkies. They like it when we tell them that they're awesome. They're learning that when other people tell them that they're awesome, then that makes them okay. So if you suddenly start turning off the praise that they've already had, you might get some pushback. But that is a warning sign that your child really needs this. You really need to work on starting to build their internal locus of control. The other thing I want to say is that there is a lot of social pressure on all of us to create the perfect childhood, which means our children are never upset with us. They never struggle. That is not our job. Our job is to raise functional adults who don't need us. And functional adults who don't need us decide for themselves who they are and if they are good enough. So when your child does get upset with you, just pat yourself on the back. It's a parenting win. You are preparing them to grow up with self-worth and to not need you. Okay, that's the first technique. Does anybody have any questions about that? Yes, Matt.
Kasey, you spoke a lot about how our parents brought us up, and in your book you mentioned about like that generation that was pat on the back, everyone's included. It seems like it's a pretty big swing back from there. What else can we be doing rather than just giving our kids a pat on the back for participating?
So one other thing I will say about praise is if you do it right, you can build self-worth. If you do it wrong, you can actually rob your child of self-worth. And the big difference is whether or not the child can replicate what you're praising. If you say to them, you got an A on your test, that's awesome, the kid's going, oh shit, what if I don't get an A next time? Whereas if you say to your child, I love the way you tried hard. I love the way you did something hard or you made a mistake and you went and asked the teacher. I love the way that you read the book before you went to bed. Those are things that they can replicate and those are things that they can succeed at every single day. So in our house, for example, I now have an 11-year-old in year 6 and a 16-year-old who's in year 11. And we have never asked about test results. We do not even mention them. That doesn't mean we don't care about tests or academics or learning. It doesn't mean we're not ambitious for our children. We are very ambitious and have very high standards, but we only focus on the process of learning. We care about what did you learn? What are you doing to learn? Maintaining curiosity, teaching kids to go and ask questions, try harder next time. And I tell you, my daughter is now in year 11. Never once do I have to tell her to study. It's all internal because she knows how to succeed. When she sits down and focuses on learning, she's already winning. And then the marks follow themselves. So if you really care about marks, stop talking about marks and start focus on the process of learning and the process of doing something hard. And so that also works for kids who are struggling academically. You know, this whole arbitrary, you have to pass to be okay. No, we don't go to school for a mark. Like, what mark did you guys get on your year 3 maths test? You don't remember because it doesn't matter. But what you learnt in grade 3, like how to count, does matter. So shift your focus from the mark to the process of learning, and you'll get much better result compliance from your kids, and it will build their self-worth. Getting back to your question, Matt, are you talking about allowing your kids to struggle? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So again, the whole idea of perfect childhoods and this idea that, it's hard to watch our kids get hurt. It's hard to watch them be embarrassed, to make a mistake, to get excluded. But these are things that happen in life. They happen to all of us. And so when we give into our natural inclination, and we all have it, I have it just the same, to rush in and protect our children from struggle, we are doing 2 things. First of all, we are saying to our child, I don't believe in you. You're right, you can't handle it, so I have to come in and rescue you. We should be giving our children the opposite message. Yeah, that's really hard, but you've got this. I know you can do that. And just one example that comes up all the time, people say, is it okay if my kid doesn't go to sports day? Is it okay if my kid doesn't go to cross country or swimming? And I'm sorry to say that the answer almost always is no. Because the thing is, if you say you don't have to go to sports day, you're right. We're saying, yeah, I agree, you can't handle it. The other thing is, when we allow our kids to avoid things that they find difficult, scary, anxiety-inducing, we are amplifying it. We are amplifying the fear. And so I had this issue in my family. One of my daughters is not not athletic at all, and cross country is really not her thing, and she really didn't want to go. And so I said to her, you don't get a choice about whether or not you go. It's part of the school curriculum, you have to go. You do get a choice about what sort of day you're going to have. If you go and you focus on all the things you don't like, the actual running in the race, you will have a terrible day. But if you go and you focus on the things that you do like, a day out of the classroom, sitting outside in the sun with your friends, eating lollies, participating in the cheers, you can have a good day. You have the power to decide that. And so she did go, and she did have a good day. But that's just a flip, that when we give it, our first instinct is to protect our child. We have to, if you know your kid's capable, then you have to back them and be their cheerleader. But the rule is, wherever possible, we need to be supporting our kids to do hard things, because life is hard. That's what I wanted to say. The research on kids who are hopeful and optimistic, and adults who are hopeful and optimistic, are not the ones that have never struggled. They're the ones who have struggled. Because when you struggle, you know from your own experience that you can endure and succeed afterwards. That is what makes people succeed in life. And we tell our kids that there is no path between here and your audacious goal that does not involve struggle. Struggle is the road to success, and our job as parents is to stand on the sidelines and cheer our kids on as they take those steps, because we can't walk there for them. The only way they get to that destination is to take every step themselves.
Being a role model, is that important in that message to kids? Like, you are trying hard things, you are struggling, and that is okay. Is that just as important as having that?
Thank you for asking that. It is so important, particularly for dads. And the reason is, in our society, sorry blokes, that you have been raised with this in a society that says real men don't fail. Like, women are allowed to fail. In fact, women get told our whole lives that we suck at things. Like, we're not pretty enough, we're not kind enough. Like, we are indoctrinated into a world where we're not good enough. Whereas you men are raised in a world where you have to succeed and never fail and never show vulnerability. And so kids, some boys have never seen dad fail at anything. So it is so powerful, because also dads, you are the superheroes, right? And if dad can fail and get back up and succeed, then that's okay for anybody to do that. So if you tell your own failing well stories, it's a great one for the dinner table. That is so empowering for kids, particularly for boys, because what we see with boys, I hear from a lot of parents, they say, my son's lazy. There is no such thing as a male laziness gene. Often, what laziness is in boys is that they cannot tolerate the discomfort of failing. They don't know that it's okay, that they can survive failing, so they opt out before it happens. So if you want your boy to reach his potential, tell him about all those things you did that were bad choices and how you stopped up. And well, maybe not all of them, but yes, great question.
Do you need to tell those stories when you've reached the outcome, or can you work through something with a child when you're still struggling with something? I'm having a hard time with it.
Yeah, I think it's both. I mean, certainly the success stories are great, but I do that in my own family. So going back a few years ago, my publisher shut down and I got all my book contracts cancelled. And I was devastated and I cried, and my girls cried and they were going, oh my God, I've never seen mum cry. And now they see me here. And I refer back to that. Do you remember when that happened to me? And I was so sad. You saw how sad I was. But what did I do? I got back up, I kept trying, and now I've succeeded. The other thing to do is build failing well stories for your children. So for example, imagine if they want to do cartwheels and they can't. They keep falling over, and you encourage them to keep practicing, and then one day they do it. And you say to them, remember how when you started doing a cartwheel, you couldn't do it, you kept wobbling, and now you can do it and both your legs are straight and you go all the way over? You did that. It was hard. You tried, and now you can do it. That's the same with multiplication. It's hard in the beginning, but you try and try, you fall over, you get back up, you keep trying, and then you can do it. And so I encourage all of you to develop a failing well story from your child's own experience that you can keep coming back to. Think about that particularly because in the whole anxiety around ATARs, there is no door that cannot be opened if you try hard enough. So you might not get in the first time. So for example, my brother is now the lead anaesthetist in Ottawa. He didn't get into medicine. So he didn't get the score. He went and did science. Then he did medicine. And I think it felt like a failure at the time. But what it did was by the time he was studying medicine, he was so sure he wanted to be a doctor. So that failure actually turned out to be a success. And so I think the thing is, and really we crush our kids with the pressure of ATAR. And so my personal focus on ATAR, I'm not sure if any of you are there with your kids at the moment, is that if your child does not get the mark that they need to get into the course that they want, you can fix that within a year. If they get to the end of year 12 and they are self-harming, have an eating disorder, hate you because you've put so much pressure on you, those problems could be for life. So just think about even things that feel like the end, there's still opportunities, there's still doors that can be opened. But I mean, I do take your point. Sometimes life just sucks, and that's part of it too. Like you have to deal with the discomfort of injustice, unfairness, making a really bad mistake, and then picking up and moving on, learning from it. Okay, let's get on to number 2. And this one is particularly for girls. Something to keep in mind for boys, but it's particularly a girl issue. And this is something that our parents got wrong and our grandparents' generation got really, really wrong. So the idea is, old school idea, was that to raise a girl to like herself, she had to be beautiful. She had to believe that she was beautiful. And if you told her over and over again that she was beautiful, one day she would believe it, and then she would have self-worth. And this was what was done to most of us. Our parents told us we were beautiful. Our friends did. We told our friends they're beautiful. Social media is full of memes telling us we're all beautiful. Dove has told us 1,000,000 times that we should all love the skin we're in. And so let me ask the women in the room, how did that work for you? Right? Most women's body image is terrible. So I just want to say to you, if telling a girl over and over again that she's beautiful did not work for us, why on earth would we think that it's going to work for our girls? And so, unless you intervene, your daughter will receive more comments about her appearance than everything else combined. Everything else combined. And so she will naturally grow up believing that her beauty and her appearance is the most important thing about her. That is what defines her worth in the world. And then she's going to go out into a world where she will never be beautiful enough. No woman in our society is beautiful enough. I interviewed 2 supermodels, legit supermodels, and both of them have terrible body images and do not think they're beautiful enough. And I remember thinking, gee, if you're not beautiful enough, what hope do the rest of us have? So the thing about beauty, getting back to where I started with an external locus of control, beauty is an external measure. It's something that someone else bestows on us, and it's also something that they take away from us. And every woman is going to have it taken away from her. If our girls grow up believing their identity is based on their beauty, they will, by definition, be insecure. There is no way around it. So if you want your daughter to like herself, she has to build her identity on things that she can control, things that can't be taken away from her. Her character, her creativity, her kindness, her humour, her persistence, all of those things. And so this one is particularly for the dads in the room, because I know dads are told, good dads tell their daughter that she's beautiful. Try to dial down the beauty comments and talk more about and value more about the things that your daughter does, thinks, and says. And that one thing will change your life. Because when we get out into the world is going to tell her beauty matters most and that she's not beautiful enough. But you get in first. And if you have built her identity on her character, you can save her a lifetime of insecurity. Absolutely, it is a challenge. But think about if you do get in first, and particularly as a dad, you are extremely powerful and have a protective factor in your daughter's body image. And you're right, we can't control a lot of the outside world, but we can control what is happening in our home, and it is an absolute gift for your daughter if she can walk through that front door and be okay with how she is without worrying that she's not beautiful enough. Now, having said all of that, it is really hard to build your daughter's real body confidence and body image if you have grandparents undermining it. I interviewed Australia's leading expert in body image disorders, eating disorders, and she said every patient she's ever had has a grandparent story. Grandparents can be so damaging, but they can also be so protective. And the reason grandparents are so powerful is because it's really hard to tell your mother-in-law to stop telling your daughter that she's beautiful, or, which also happens once our girls hit tweens and they start to put weight on, because it takes a lot of calories to become a woman and it's normal to put weight on, but then we get that generation going when she has a piece of cake. It's so damaging and it will live with her forever. So I have my mother, if she's not talking about how someone looks, she's not talking. And I've had to have that conversation with her and it did not go well. It still has not gone well. And in the end, I just said, you don't have to agree with me, Mum, but these are my kids. And the rule in our house is that we do not talk about how anybody's body looks. Like, I grew up with a terrible body image, and I made a vow that this intergenerational body hatred stops with me. So in my house, we only talk about what bodies do. And so when my mum's on Skype and she talks about how someone's let themselves go, bye. I'm not saying that that's easy. It's really hard, but grandparents in particular are so influential. But try to get them on board. Like, if you say to your parents or your in-laws that if you spend time with my daughter, your granddaughter, because she's fun and she knows you want to do things with her because of her character, you can change her life. Like, grandparents are that powerful. So yeah, I would encourage you, if you can, have that awful conversation with grandparents. Try to have it. We also do a lot of deflecting. So when we're out and my neighbour will, say, oh, that's a pretty dress you're wearing. And my husband will jump in and go, it's really great for climbing trees. Just trying to deflect like that. Oh, you're so beautiful. And Chris once said, and her reading's so beautiful too. So, and because it is difficult, because most people mean well, right? And so you don't want to be offensive, you don't want to be that person. But every time you can protect your daughter from those messages, you are banking credit into her self-worth. So I think we started talking about it, probably when she was 10, when she was old enough to understand. Yeah, particularly about fat, because they had such an issue about fat. And my daughter came home from school making a derogatory comment about fat. And so I said to her, well, your grannies have fat bodies. Is there anything wrong with them? No. I was like, well, and the message that we give our girls is all bodies are good bodies. All bodies keep us alive. All bodies are valuable, full stop. The conversation doesn't go further than that. Some bodies have more fat than others. Some bodies have more muscle than others. Some bodies are tall, some bodies are short. Your body keeps you alive, and it's a good body. That's how we leave it. But if you've got someone in your family who's got this constant, even if you're not talking specifically about your daughter's body, if you have someone in your family that has a constant running narrative about the appearance of other people, particularly about women, your daughter will learn that that applies to her too. So that's why we have a total ban on talking about how bodies look. Okay, so I have a whole section of this in the book, and so I would encourage you to read it. But basically, we need to strip out any moral judgment from food. There's everyday food, and there's sometimes food. And that's it. And it's good to eat sometimes food. And so the thing is, what we see from some parents is they withhold all the treats from their kids. If you don't let your kids eat sometimes food, you're creating a closet eater. And just have a look at the kids who won't leave the lolly table at parties. They're the ones with the almond mums. They are, right? So you're not going to get your kid to not eat those foods. They're just going to stuff their faces when you're not looking. So what you do is you fill your house with mostly, in fact, almost entirely, everyday foods. So then you don't have to police them. You talk to your kid about listening to your body. So you tap in, you eat when you're hungry, you stop when you're full. And then you get them to trust their body with the everyday foods that are in your house. And then the sometimes foods are for birthdays and birthday parties and when you go to a cafe and treats like that, and then you don't have to police nutrition all the time. Okay, should we move on to the next one? All right, so the next one, this one's for boys. As I mentioned this earlier about you, Matt, that there's a lot of talk at the moment about traditional masculinity and how it's all bad and we need to scrap it. Now, I disagree. I think there are certain components of traditional masculinity that we are losing, and that is actually a problem. And one of those is the idea of service. So if you go back to the old school gentleman, the noble gentleman had honour and he served his family and he served his community. He got worth, self-worth, and identity and self-esteem from taking actions and making meaningful contributions to the people around him. That then bleeds into the Anzac legends. Why do we love the Anzacs? Because of service. Not only did they serve their country, they served each other with mateship. So when you look at old school noble gentlemen and the Anzacs, there are no lone wolves in those stories. But yet what is happening, and not everyone obviously, but in general in society, there has been a shift to raising boys to be lone wolves, to focus entirely on your own personal development. And you look at the extreme version of that is the manosphere, where it's all about looking after yourself. One boy, a 7-year-old boy, said to me, "Kindness is for chicks and losers." Now, that's horrific, but all he said out loud was a message that is being permeated in our society. Now, there is nothing wrong with personal development, right? I encourage it, like it's great for all of us to do that. But if you are solely focused on yourself and you think that doing something good for other people, serving other people, is for chicks and losers, life's not going to turn out well for you. And so one teenage boy said to me, and he was raised as the lone wolf, "It doesn't matter if I get out of bed in the morning. It doesn't matter to anyone what I do." This is the existential void that is being created in boys who are being raised to only think about their own personal development, their own excellence, and not think about what they can offer the world around them. And so the research shows that the people with the greatest well-being, the people with the best friends, now keep in mind we're talking about a male loneliness crisis as well. The people with friends and good well-being are the people who do things for other people. If we raise boys to be lone wolves, their mental health's going to suffer and they're going to struggle having friends. Now let me just give you a couple of examples of the way that we are raising boys to be like this. The first one is chores. So the research shows that even in the same house, daughters do more chores than sons. When chores are paid for, even in the same house, sons get paid more money than daughters. Now, if your son isn't doing any chores, you are risking raising a boy who's going to go out into the world who doesn't know how to look after himself. Now, that's a disaster for his partner, but it's also a disaster for himself, because how can you really have self-worth if you can't even feed yourself, right? So you need to be establishing critical life skills in your child. But a recent study from Harvard, a 75-year study, has shown that the biggest indicator of a successful adult is whether or not they did chores at home. And the reason for that is a couple. One is because it's just basic competence. Two, it is about learning that you need to contribute to the family and getting the meaning and the self-worth from that. But three, it is training your boy or your girl to do things they don't want to do. If your kid is complaining packing the dishwasher, well done. Because in life, if you're going to succeed, you have to do things you don't want to do. And chores is the training ground for that. So get your boys and girls to do chores so they are contributing to the family. Another thing that is happening just in society more generally is when you look at preschool age kids, girls and boys both love helping as much as each other. You know, they probably drive you nuts wanting to help in the kitchen and help in the garage and help with the shopping, right? By the time they get to primary school, that stops. Boys have absorbed this message that helping is for chicks and losers. So even if it's not coming from your home, it is coming from our culture. So we need to address that by when our boys help someone, point out to them, it feels good when you help someone, doesn't it? Make sure they recognise that helping someone is good for them too. One other hack that you can do is get your boy to choose, purchase, and wrap the presents that he gives. This is just another micro example of where girls are taught service and boys are not. So when a girl buys a present for her friend, she thinks about it, She develops empathy by thinking, what would my friend like? I'm going to ask my friend what she likes. That gives her self-worth. Then she goes to the shop with mum and she buys it. That's agency. Then she wraps it. Then she gives it to the friend and she sees the joy on her friend knowing that she did that. That's self-worth. What do we do for boys? We pick something up from the store, we wrap it, we write the card, and on the way to the birthday party we say, can you just give that to your friend? Now again, these are generalizations, but that is another micro example of how girls are being taught empathy, service. We know that girls are not having a loneliness epidemic, boys are, and that's another example of where boys are not getting just another opportunity to feel like they matter, to feel like they're contributing.
Would want the toy that he thinks for his friend, and he would decide he doesn't want to use it anymore. How would you advise of navigating that transition?
He needs to be upset. And so you need to give him a cuddle and say, yeah, it's really hard, buddy, but you're going to be okay. And you give him a cuddle and you don't buy him one too. And so this is particularly for boys. We know that boys struggle to deal with uncomfortable emotions far more than girls do, right? One of the reasons is that in our culture, boys are allowed to express anger and not much else, right? So he's feeling jealousy, name it. And it's okay to have those feelings, right? Because what happens is the research shows that when you accurately name an emotion, I can see that you're feeling jealous right now. You shortcut the triggering event and distress straight down. I can see you're feeling jealous at the moment. That's really hard, buddy. You give him a cuddle and he learns to deal with that uncomfortable emotion and he moves on. When you don't name it, when you either indulge it by buying him the toy or saying, okay, you can keep it, or you yell at him, but don't be so selfish, you're shaming him for the emotion that he's feeling. What happens, particularly for boys, is that they then learn that those emotions are wrong. And then what happens when these boys get older is that they become lazy. So they avoid situations where they're going to feel uncomfortable because they don't have the experience to cope with this uncomfortable feelings, or they offload their emotions on someone else, or they escape their emotions through dysfunctional behaviour. Now, the research shows one of the reasons that boys are not doing as well as girls in school is because boys cannot deal with the uncomfortable emotion that is required to succeed. Because in order to succeed, you have to get feedback that doesn't feel good. The present is jealousy, but maybe jealousy is a feeling academically as well, right? If boys can't cope with negative emotions and know from their own experience that they can withstand it, they withdraw and they don't reach their academic potential. So that's another reason why he needs to feel the discomfort of not being able to keep the present. Oh, but also having said that, sometimes you just can't be bothered, right? Or life's busy. As Matt said at the beginning, you don't have to get this right all the time. Most of the time, half the time is better than no time. And the other thing is brains are plastic. So if anything I'm talking about here, you're going, oh shit, I haven't been doing that. That doesn't matter. You can start now. A really good technique is natural consequences. And our generation of parents, we've been told that we shouldn't let our kids experience natural consequences. So it's well, those dirty dishes are the dishes that your dinner's going to be served on. So unless they're on the sink to get clean, you can't have dinner. That's not shame, that's just the natural consequence. Go and wash it and then we can have dinner. And you don't even have to be angry about that. The other thing is this idea that kids only have to clean up their own mess. Whereas that's not how society works, and it's also not how we get the meaning from helping. So it's perfectly acceptable for one boy to clean up the other boy's mess and vice versa. And it's just we're the parent. You just have to do it. I know you don't want to. I don't like cleaning up either, but you just have to do it.
In that moment, are you setting consequences as punishment or trying to positively reinforce it?
Okay, that's a really good question. I'm glad we've gone there. I want to talk about the difference between punishment and discipline. Okay, So punishment is about deliberately inflicting emotional or physical pain to try to get your child to do something differently next time. And that includes shame. Now, the research shows that punishment doesn't work. What punishment does is make kids sneaky, and it makes kids ashamed. And if you look at the prison population, those people didn't have permissive parents. They had parents who punished them, right? And so this is a new way of thinking. So let me give you an example of punishment which often shocks people. Time out. We think that is an enlightened consequence. Time out is deliberately inflicting shame on your child, hoping that they will make a choice differently next time. So think about it. Your kids just smashed your other child's rocket. And you go, okay, in the corner, and we think it's scientific, and we go, okay, you're 3, so you need 3 minutes in the corner, because someone came up with that number and makes us feel like it's valid. While your 3-year-old is sitting in the corner, what do you think the chances are that he is considering his actions and deciding to be a better person? No, what he's doing in that corner is being consumed by shame, and he's thinking one of 2 things. He's thinking, I hate Dad, or he's thinking, I hate me. I am so bad that I need to be in this corner. Nothing good comes from shame, ever, ever. All right? What we need to do instead is think about discipline. If you go back to the original intent of the original meaning of the word discipline, it means to learn. It means to acquire skills. That's why we have disciplines at university and disciplines in the Olympics. Every time your child behaves badly, and I'm not saying be permissive, I'm not supportive of permissive parenting at all, have really high standards and firm boundaries. It is an opportunity to learn, not to shame. Keep in mind that most kids really do want to do the right thing. And they do the wrong thing simply because in that moment they can't do the right thing. Like, how long did it take for your child to walk? How many times did they fall over before they got back up? Why would we think that we could tell them to not throw the blocks one time and they would learn? Like, you have to repeat over and over again. So what we do is natural consequences. We come down very calmly. It's not okay to break your brother's robot. We need to apologise and we need to pick it up. And the natural consequences is he needs to pick up the blocks and put them back. If he does it again, you go, okay, you're having trouble at the moment, so therefore you can't play with the blocks at the moment. You can't play with the blocks until you can be sure that you don't break your brother's rocket or robot or whatever. And so by being very firm, it's still a no. It's still a, this is not acceptable behaviour. But there's no shame in that. And what the next part of the conversation is, what can we do next time? So you don't get stuck in the shame of the mistake, because that doesn't lead to better behaviour. So the research shows the parents who punish the most always punish the most. So if punishment worked, they wouldn't be punishing the most, right? So you move on to, what can we do better next time? All of those opportunities are opportunities to learn. Now, this is going to help while they're young, but it is absolutely going to pay dividends when they're teenagers. When your child does the teenage equivalent of breaking someone's robot, if they think you're going to do the adult equivalent of sticking them in the corner, you are going to be the last person they come to for help when you actually want to be the first person. So if your child sees you as the ally who is going to help them learn to do better next time, they will call you. Their friends will call you. I'm getting calls now from my daughter's 16-year-old friends who have stuffed up because they know that I will help and not harm.
How do you deal with the other child that wants to be the parent as well? So we use the word consequences in our house.
Yep.
But often the one that is quite dysregulated is obviously dysregulated. The other one's like, well, Mum, there needs to be a consequence. And there's some form of shame coming aboard the parenting coming from the other child. How do you balance that?
Yeah, we'll focus on the one who's dysregulated. they're not naughty. And so this is a misconception that has been passed through the generations, particularly with boys. Boys are born naughty. We need to shame them into good. No. If your child's losing it, they actually need your help in that moment. And so my rule is when in doubt, hug. If they'll let you, hug them until they calm down, then open the hug out and include the other child in there too. Yes, absolutely. And I mean, it's common with you too. If you are, what do you love doing? Let's say you love, I don't know, computer programming, and you're at the middle, at the end of nailing an algorithm, I don't know, and your wife comes in and goes, honey, let's talk about what we're doing on the weekend. Are you going to stop in the middle and go, oh yeah, I'll just let that 1 hour of work go and let's talk about the picnic? I think we have these expectations on our children that we don't even have for ourselves. So a technique that can help to do that is get down on the child's level. So you get down, if they're on the floor, you get down on their level. Get them, particularly with boys, you need the eye contact. They need to look at you. If they're not looking at you, their ears don't work, right? That is not disrespect. That is just boys being focused on their activity. And also, that's actually a good thing. Having laser focus will set them up for success in life. You actually, you should be happy about that. Does anyone have a problem with screens, getting their kids off screens? Would you like a tip for that? Yes? All right. So what we hear from a lot of parents is that my child is addicted to screens. I would like to reframe that. If your child loves playing Minecraft so much that they do it whenever they can, that is not necessarily an addiction. I have one child who loves reading and she's late to school every day because she's reading her book, cleaning her teeth. No one says that my child has a reading addiction. I have another child who always has a basketball in her hand. No one's saying my child has a basketball addiction, right? So let's put this in perspective. You only need to worry if your child has a screen addiction if they're not meeting their milestones, if they're not going to school, if they're not eating, if they're not engaging in other activities. Just because your child loves something, that's good. It's good to be passionate about something. One of the reasons kids get so upset when we ask them to get off screens is because we are not respecting what they're doing and how important it is to them. So just imagine that your child is playing basketball and then at some arbitrary time, because that's what it is to kids, some arbitrary time, we decide that basketball time's over. So we march onto the court and go, come on buddy, basketball time's over, let's go. Your kid would be really annoyed at you because they're in the middle of the game, their team's relying on them and they're about to shoot a goal, right? But we wouldn't do that because we respect basketball as something important. What your child is doing on their screen is equally important to them. And if you just demand that they get off at some random time, they could lose the work that they've done for the last 20 minutes. They could let down their team members and there could be social consequences the next day. So if you actually respect that what your child is playing on is important to them, it will change the way you interact. So you've got to get off the screen in 20 minutes, find a place to secure the assets or finish the game, and then you can leave. Because 20 minutes is an arbitrary time for kids, 10 minutes or whatever, Jocelyn Brewer, who is a psychologist who specialises in online psychology, suggests you get an hourglass. You stick it in front of your kid and say, you need to get off by the time all the sand comes through, so find the best time. And if we start respecting that what they're doing on that screen is actual play and it is important to them, you will have less pushback when you get them off.
I tried the clock, I tried the sand. I don't want to know. And then I'll be like, okay, 30 minutes is up. Don't tell me 30 minutes is up. I don't know how to time.
Do you get that when you leave the park?
Usually I probably don't care if he stays at the park for 3 hours.
Okay, so the difference here is you.
Yeah, it is.
Isn't it?
Help me.
So, because, kids crack it when they have to stop doing something that they want to do. All of us have pulled our screaming tantrum kid off a swing, haven't we? Because it's time to go home. but it's time to go home. And so I would advise never use confiscating a device as a punishment, because we need to have a really trusted relationship with our kids when it comes to their devices. We need to know what they're doing on them. We need to take out all the power from that device. And if it's something that you can take off them if they use it badly, they won't tell you things. So try and find something else. But again, not punishment, it's just like, that's the rules. And then he can crack it, and you can give him a cuddle, and you go, yeah, I know, it's so frustrating. It's really hard when it comes to an end, isn't it? And that's the lesson, like, that's life.
So just, that's fine, that's what we do, and that's life. And just hoping you had
a magic wand? Yeah, no, sorry. But it's also normal. Like, if you're not saying no to your child multiple times every day, you're probably not holding your boundaries firmly enough, right? Like, that's part of the job, as however unpleasant that it is, right?
Kasey, is 600 no's in a day okay?
Yeah, well, you know, I forget the stat, but I think for a 2-year-old, it's well into the hundreds. Yeah.
I think we're definitely getting there with our 6-year-old. Hey, Kasey, we had a lot of people that weren't able to come today, partly because of geographic, work, kids, that sort of stuff. So I've got a few questions, and this one comes in from Matt from Brunswick West. What is one thing that I should be doing to help Max and Rosie have a more kind inner voice rather than a critical one?
Okay, so, well, the number one is what we've already talked about. Focus on learning rather than punishing. Because when you shame your child, that voice stays in their head forever, right? So a mistake is an opportunity to learn to do better next time, and we're all learning. Yeah, so no, so we had one like that. She's grown out of it now, so don't worry. And so if you give in, then the strategy works, right? And so of course she'll do it again, right? Kids do what works, and they, you know, that's a good thing that they're smart enough to work out what works. So what we've said to our daughter, because remember, all emotions are okay. So we say to her, we said, you can yell, you can cry, you can stamp, but you can't do it here because it's affecting other people because we're having dinner. So go and do it in your room, and then come back when you're feeling better. And then when she comes back, it's like, oh, yay, you've come back and joined us. Well done. Are you feeling better now? And so there's no shame, but there's also that boundary that your behaviour does affect other people, and that you need to be considerate of the family. But it's a judgment call too. Like sometimes, like often when kids are losing it, they actually can't regulate any other way. And often it does need to be a quiet cuddle. But locking her in, yelling at her, shutting the door, that's shame. Yeah. But it's just, this is affecting other people. It's fine that you're really angry and that you want to yell. You just can't do it right here.
Violence.
Yep.
And hitting something that we're living with notice at the moment, and consequences now.
Yep. That's a hard no. If violence is ever okay, then what are you going to do when they're 16? Right? So, absolutely. Yeah. And so I disagree with the gentle parenting philosophy that if you just show them love and kindness, they'll grow out of it. Well, why? Why will they grow out of it? Because it works. So I think that any kind of violence for their own benefit needs to be an absolute hard no. And the best time to do that is when they're little, right? When they're losing it. So, I mean, one time my daughter bit me. She was probably 2 and was like, no, we do not bite. And she burst into tears and I felt awful. And she didn't do it again. But if I had done, oh, that's okay, honey, or when you bite, mummy feels sad, well, she'll just bite me again, right? And then as she gets older, that neurological pathway is still there that, you know, when you feel uncomfortable, you lash out. So yeah, when a child is hitting, if you can, it's restrain them. It's like, no, we don't hit. Like, so every emotion is okay, but every expression of emotion is not okay. So you can feel angry, but you can't hit.
Kasey, how do we as parents incidentally undermine resilience by trying to help? I know you covered a little bit earlier, but is there anything really specific you can give us?
Yep. So we've talked about don't give in to the anxiety and the fears, right? Because that amplifies the anxiety and the fears. But one rule that we have is only do for your child what they cannot do for themselves. So something that our parents' generation got wrong is they thought that telling us we were awesome would build our self-worth and our self-esteem. And it turned out that that just didn't work. What builds self-esteem is knowing that you can do life. And that doesn't mean a cabinet full of trophies or anything like that. It just means that you can handle situations that happen in life. And part of that is just looking after yourself. So we call it independence and mastery. If your child can do something for themselves, they do it for themselves. And within reason. So you might not have an hour in the morning for your child to tie their shoelaces. But if they can, they should. Every child should be carrying their own bag to school. And parents go, oh, but he's little and he's had a hard day. It's like, well, within a week, he will build up the strength to carry a bag. Like, kids in Africa are carrying, water 5 kilometres a day. Your kid can carry his bag from the car to school. But what that does is it says to your child, you can do hard things. You can be responsible for your possessions. And that is actually a really big one when you go to high school. When kids freak out at high school, they're not freaking out about the subjects. They're freaking out about 3 things. 1, talking to people. So, because they've got different teachers and they've got all these different people they have to interact with. Don't speak for your child if they can speak for themselves. When you go into the doctor, before they go in, say, okay, when we get in there, you're going to have to give your name. What are you going to say? You get your child to give their name. If they're not vomiting in the back of the car, you can say, when we get in there, you're going to have to tell the doctor what's wrong. What's wrong? My ear hurts. Okay, good. And they tell them that their ear hurts. When they've lost their jumper at school, they have to go to the office. You can be with them, but they have to ask to go to the lost property bucket or whatever. Research shows that the kids who are allowed to speak for themselves integrate into school, they do better academically and socially than the kids whose parents speak for them, So that's it. Speak for themselves. Manage property. Kids freak out at high school because they've got a locker and they've got to get their books and their pencil case and their bag. If your child is carrying their own bag, they're responsible for packing their own bag, getting their lunchbox in and out of their bag. All of that will reduce their anxiety for high school. And the third one is navigating space. Get your child to know where they are when they go places. And you can start in a shopping shop. Get them to go to the end of the aisle to get the packet of noodles and bring it back. Then get them to go to the next aisle. And then slowly just build up their independence and their mastery, and that will give them confidence and self-esteem.
Kasey, one of the things in the Purple Book that you spoke about, which I think is probably really relevant for a lot of us now, 3:50 p.m. for me today, is kids that answer questions and talk to their teachers at parent-teacher interviews. Mm-hmm. For me, that was a really simple way of thinking about how we can get Max in particular to advocate for himself, because often when you go to the doctor, it's the earache, it's the tears, that sort of stuff. You're screaming and dragging them there. But today, so I think that's a really simple one. And the other one that I often use with Rosie, who's sitting up there at the moment, is if she wants a baby chino, she has to order it. And that was sort of off the back of reading Kasey's book. She can do it, she knows how to do it, but it's often that fear of wanting to talk to someone. But we had a really nice moment the other night at the pizza shop where Rosie went up with my phone to pay. And seeing her come in from, probably 18 months ago, we were quite worried about her speaking and her confidence. A lot of the stuff that we've sort of been trying to build in has come to fruition.
Ordering food is very motivating, because if you don't order, you don't get.
She will burst into that store and talk to any stranger that is in there about what's going on in that day. And then in some random moments when it comes to ordering a drink, she just burrows straight into us and just can't face that final moment. And
Well, it's different in that she's actually asking for what she wants. That's different, isn't it? Because she's chatting and then suddenly she's saying, I want something. So it's actually, I would say, it's possibly the good girl conditioning of wanting things. Do you think that's part of it? But the natural consequence is if she doesn't order, she doesn't get. So you go home. And then the next time, she might order. So so the principal that we interviewed who talked about kids speaking for themselves and doing better at school, they don't have to speak in full sentences. So for example, in the intake interview for prep, and they say, what's your favourite thing at kinder? Instead of just answering, say, remember what you did yesterday and we brought it home and put it on the fridge? What was that? And just getting them to say painting is still telling the child what you think matters, your opinions are important, and it's just building the confidence and the skill of speaking up for yourself.
Kasey, there was a real theme of the questions that came through about the neurodivergence, which we're really clear about, and you're really clear in your book, in your books, sorry. But the other one was around carrying confidence into teenagerhood, if that's even a word. But I wanted to overlay that with the importance of the dinner table.
Okay. Yep. First of all, if you can have family dinners, do. The research is so compelling in the bang for buck or the bang for time of a family dinner. Kids who have family dinners, they do better at school, they have better friendships, they have better physical health, they have better emotional health. And so there's certain theories about why the family dinner is so important, but one of them is we need you. So getting back to that feeling of belonging, you matter in this family. But another one is the power of ritual. It is very calming for a child to actually have that ritual of doing the same thing over and over. It's also and when they're teenagers and they don't want to come, but they still have to, teaching them about obligations and that you can do hard things. But the other thing is, one of the things that I think is really important at a family dinner is the opportunity for you to let your children know how much you enjoy their company. So children see their value through our eyes. And if we talk to our kids as if they are awesome and they're funny, and kids are funny, right? And that we really delight in their company, I say, and I'm only talking research, this is absolutely my gut feel, that you will avoid 80% of the teenage problems. If your kid knows that you think they are awesome, they will just do so much better in the rocky teenage years. And dinner is a time to do that. Now, I know that every family can't have dinner every night, but what we do as a society is we prioritise the important things. We get our kid to ballet because we think it's important. I would suggest picking one night a week or one night a month and just make it important and make it happen, because it is so compelling, the benefit of a family dinner.
Can I just say that, the opportunity for everyone to take a book or two books, whatever colour you want or need or are hoping for, do it, read it, and if you don't get a chance to read it all, go to the back of every chapter, and particularly for the parents or influencers in your kids' lives that probably won't read it, there's 2 or 3 points at the back of every chapter, and I think it said, it's notes for dads, which I absolutely love, but I would implore everyone to read them, and if you can't be bothered, go through to the summary points, and that will probably evoke more of the conversations and the questions that you might have had or that might come up now afterwards. Now, Kasey, I am very wary of your time. The fact that you're able to lean so heavily into research is incredible, because there's so much bullshit out there. Yep. Like, there's so many influencers, that sort of stuff, that are giving us ad nauseum information, but none of it's tested. So for me to have some semblance of structure, but also be really relatable and then also practical. And for me, obviously you wrote some of these books when your girls, when Violet and Ivy were a lot smaller.
Yes.
What, if you were writing them for the first time now, how does it change with a 16 and an 11-year-old or whatever they are?
I struggle to say this without sounding really smug, But when I wrote Raising Girls Who Like Themselves, Violet, my first daughter, she'd just been born. And I knew that what was going in there worked because we read all the studies and we spoke to the world-leading experts. But Violet's 16 now, and I look at her and I go, my God, it works. Like that framework in that book, when I look at the way my daughter is navigating being 16 compared to some of her friends, she has such rock-solid confidence that makes me weep with envy that I wish that I had. And so I cannot stress more that that framework, if you actually apply it consistently, will change your daughter's life and your son's, but also it will just make the teenage years a joy rather than worry.
Thank you. Now, before we finish up, opportunity will be, Kasey will be around for a little bit. If you've got any of those more personal questions, but equally feel free to send them through to Kate in our team, who's been doing most of the comms, and then she'll pass them over to Kasey. Kasey, your insight has been incredible.
Thank you. Can I just say, I didn't get onto bullying. Does anyone want me to do we have time for that?
Absolutely. We've got time if you've got time.
Yeah, I definitely have time. Do you want to hear it? Because it is really effective strategy. And so this is another thing that what we were told to handle bullying was wrong. So for girls, what we were told as girls is when someone is deliberately being mean to us, we should just ignore it, right? Now, first of all, there is no dignity and self-worth in ignoring bad behaviour, right? That corrodes us from the inside. It also doesn't work because what it says to the other person is you need to try harder next time, and they do, okay? So just ignoring is not a strategy for bullying that works. Often what we hear for boys, and I heard a parenting expert say just 2 weeks ago online that when boys get bullied, they should punch back. One punch and it's all over and it's sorted. Now, first of all, the research does not support that. The kids who punch back end up being bullied more. But also, we should never be encouraging our boys to do something in childhood that could land them in jail in adulthood, right? If you've told your boy to punch back, are you so sure that he won't do that when he's 18 and has a belly full of beer, right? So please don't encourage your kid to punch. And I understand why parents do that because they're so desperate and their kid's getting bullied every day and they've run out of strategies. Well, here is a strategy that actually works. It is called the quick comeback, and it is really good for adults too. It is a short, sharp statement that tells the other person, so it's not a question, it's a statement. I heard what you did, I heard what you said, and I'm not okay with it. Now, when your child is 18 months old, younger, you start with a quick comeback. And my girls was stop it, I don't like it. And stop it, I don't like it. And so when your boys or your children are fighting at home, you teach that. Rough and tumble play is really important. Stop it, I don't like it. And delivery is really important, so you need to role play it with them. They need to say it in their biggest big boy or big girl voice, and they need to stand tall, and they need to say it so many times that in the heat of the moment, it will come out of their mouth. As they get older, the statement will change. So it could be something, a really good one for boys, tween boys and older is not cool, right? Or my tween daughters at the moment say, seriously? But what the research shows is that one statement delivered with authority is the most effective way to reduce the severity of bullying and the occurrence of it. So just one example that I was working with a boy who 3 times a day he got elbowed in the stomach because they had to stand in line order. And the kid in front of him would elbow him in the stomach every time they stood in line to go into class. So he worked on his quick comeback with his mum, and the first time he said it, the boy just looked at him. Morning tea, the boy elbowed him again and he used his quick comeback. By lunchtime he had stopped, and the last I heard was that the kid with the elbow was now being really nice to that boy. So it doesn't work all the time, but it is the most effective strategy to teach your child.
Wonderful. I do have one bit of homework for everyone, because this won't get embedded and enacted on if you don't lock it away. So can I ask that off the back of today's session, that you send me personally through one takeaway and one thing that you will try to enact on in the next month, and then have some accountability for yourself, but also please start the books. And I haven't checked this off with Kasey, but I know that Kasey is absolutely open to other opportunities. So schools is where you do a lot of your work. But I think the corporate space, there's a lot of parents that are so focused on their career that if there are anyone that you would like us to connect with, Kasey, because you feel like they get some value out of it. And equally, I'm sure there's plenty of partners, friends, siblings that weren't able to make it today. We'd be more than happy and love to run something like this again. So please let us know. You will get the opportunity to provide feedback, both on the timing, on the venue, on the Nutella donuts that I got the all clear from Rosie that they're pretty delicious on your way out. So please help us to, spread this word a little bit more. It's really important to us. We know that money takes up the same space in people's head, whether someone has $1 million or someone has zero. And I feel like it's the same with kids. Whether your kid's dominating on one day or they're an absolute asshole on another day, it is still taking up the same space. So for us to have 2 or 3 of those really practical things to take away, it's incredibly important. But also we know that it's a bit of a journey, the same as it is with your money. So our team is here to help. We can't help with the kids. Definitely I can't. But we can certainly help with the money.
Thanks, Matt, and thank you again for organising it and for your example of traditional masculine service.
Thank you.